2. Boom, 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 boom. All right. All right, testing 1 2. So we are going to be talking about how to buy your first investment property. I got some friends that are going to be joining us. Those that are on Instagram and Facebook and all that, and YouTube, you can see myself and James Lewis, who facilitates a lot of our what we call, what's up, Nick? What we call our Dealmaker's Dream, which is a program within our program that you go ahead and bring James up here. A program within our program where our students buy real estate, and we facilitate the process and give them support all the way through it. So we'll talk about how to buy your actual first investment property, and then we'll take you through the progression of what it looks like for your real estate investing journey, your the educational journey. A lot of people think it's just learning how to flip houses. Everybody needs to know how to flip houses. That's not the end all be all. That is a means to an end, right? Ultimately, we need a play to be able to increase the number of cash flowing assets that we have. And anytime we acquire an asset and add value to it, we need to be able to leverage that to buy another cash flowing asset. Because once you get to the lifestyle that you want, you need the residual income, the cash flow, the monthly cash flow to be able to support that lifestyle. So sometimes things go great, sometimes things go bad. There's certain segments of the investing world that might be going well. And when that goes bad, you've got a shift and you may need an influx of cash. What do we do when we need an influx of cash really quick? We go and we flip something, we flip a house. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll be doing room resets. James, I see you on there, brother. Tell everybody who you are, where you're from, sir.
What's going on, man? Hopefully, sound okay. Oh, hold on.
Well, we didn't test that out. That was James in Colombia. It's not going to that restaurant is not going to work. So what we'll do is James may not be able to jump in on this one. He may have to go to his house, his home Wi-Fi to be able to do that, and we'll have to just get him on when we can get him on. I'm gonna try one more time see if he worked it out. James, did you work that situation out?
Let's see.
Hey, he said, yeah, it's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. Somebody said, "Tell James to change the battery in that fire alarm." That's not James's. That's not James's fire alarm. That's he's at a restaurant. So sorry. All right. Hold on 1 second. All right. All right. So we are going to give James one more opportunity to work it out. The sound situation. That's when you know you're in a third world country. Yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do it. All right, so I'm gonna take James. I'm gonna go ahead and take Jake James out the game on there. We'll just leave James on TikTok. James, you hear me on TikTok? All right. All right, he's on. You're on mute, dude. All right. All right, that's not gonna work. All right, so let's get into it. Rose, how you doing? I see you on TikTok. Can you hear us all right, Rose? All right, tell everybody where you from and what you do, sis. That's what's up. So we are going to, if you guys can, go ahead and share the room because there's some things I'm going to be going over, and we'll get repeat questions, and I'll end up going over the same things over and over and over, which is okay because we're going to be here for a while. What's up, Mr. Valaire? If there's any sound issues, just go ahead and leave a comment wherever you are, and we'll try to get it Worked out. I see Tavares over there on TikTok. Why don't you go ahead and come on up, brother? Vince, I see you over there on TikTok. Good questions last night, sir. I'm gonna go ahead and invite you up. I'm sure if you have a question, other people will have the same questions, and let's get to it. So, where do we start as real estate investors, as new real estate investors? Where do we start? You got to be able to determine if it's worth your time to even engage in a particular subject property. And how do we do that? Because we're going to take it all the way back to basics. So before we get into that, my name is Otis James. I'm a full-time real estate investor out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the managing member of the Four Data Points Academy. That organization was founded out of necessity. Most don't know the history of that, but what happened was there was a point during the, and by the way, I've been teaching real estate, and I've been exposed to real estate my entire life. I'm a real estate broker in multiple states. I ran a mortgage brokerage for about 13 years with my father. We funded just under $1 billion in the time that we had it. We had a team of about 9 people. I was a notary public. I had a notary signing agency. I put together a 7-figure company outside of real estate. I spent the better part of 20 years in the multifamily commercial industry. I've consulted on projects for multiple municipalities here in the States and international, and a couple spots over in Africa. So I'm well versed in the real estate space, and I've also had some success training people. Some of the people that I trained were uh, tasked to run, $100 million developments, even $200 and $300 million developments, and they went on to get awards for things that were important, like year over year net operating income. That's a big award in the multifamily commercial industry because it's all about the money. And since those assets are valued based on their ability to generate revenue, that owners of those developments were very, very happy with that. So I'm probably one of the more well-rounded people that you'll find in the real estate investing space. I took all the best practices from some of the largest multifamily organizations in the world, and I put them all together. And when I train people, it's things that I've learned through that space. Tavares, you with us? Can you hear us over on TikTok, brother? All right. So it looks like on what is that, YouTube? It says can only hear you, can't hear questions being asked. So let's see how we can fix that. I think we can fix that. So hold on one second. Is that Lachey? All right, Lachey, I'm about to switch something up for you. Hold on. All right. So I just switched the audio to the Rodecaster. So Lachey, how does that sound? Can you hear it? Anybody on somebody let me know how you can, if you can hear me on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. Just put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me all right. Check 1, check 2, sound check. Sound check. Tavares, you still hear me all right?
I do. You sound great, my man.
All
What's up
right.
to everybody in TikTok land? What's up, everybody on the live? What's happening?
All right. Hold on, let me get organized here.
Go ahead, do your thing.
Y'all gonna learn something today. I promise you. We're gonna learn
We
something today.
gotta learn it. Every single day we learn something special.
Yeah, we're gonna I'm gonna treat y'all today. Lachey,
I
what
love
happened?
that.
Lachey, you supposed to let me know if you could hear me. What happened? All right. All right. So we were gonna get into how to assess a deal first. And then hold on. It says I'm muted. I'm not muted. Shay says I'm muted. Hold on. I'm not muted. Hold on. Well, I don't know what to hold on. I'm gonna check it. I'm gonna check it. Testing, testing, 1, 2, testing, testing, 1, 2. We always go through this, don't we? Testing, testing, 1, 2. All right, you can hear me, Lachey? So it's good now? Okay. All right. All right. I think all right. I think we're all right. Thank you. All right. All right. That's what's up. Okay. Let's get back into it. 4 data points. So if you are a new real estate investor, and just imagine this, you get the idea you want to get into real estate investing, you go online, you see all of the trash. You got to filter through all of the trash, all of the clickbait. Everybody telling you, if you just swipe your credit card, I can teach you how to buy houses for $0. All of the stuff. All right. And then you take a course. Nothing wrong with a course. I don't think that a course is sufficient, but I also don't think it's, worthless. So when you take this course, you're still not going to be a seasoned real estate investor, but depending on how much you spend for the course, it may be worth it. For example, if you're taking a real estate investing course, you shouldn't be paying more than $300 or $400 for it. If you are paying anything under $100, maybe $50 free, right? Anytime you go to a free multifamily course or residential investing course, what that is it's a sales funnel, right? So there's very few people that do workshops for that low of an amount because of how much it costs them to do the workshop. For example, sometimes I'll get the postcards in the mail and it'll say, hey, free multifamily workshop coming to your town, free. So I already know I host workshops. I've hosted workshops all over the country. As a matter of fact, our normal schedule, we do Miami, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, Long Beach, Oakland. I know I'm missing some. LA. I'm probably missing one or two places. So I know what it costs to put these presentations on. And I typically charge, 100 to 150 bucks to get into these presentations because I'm actually going to be teaching you stuff there. Anytime you take one of these courses or go to these events that are free, it's a sales funnel. So you go there and they don't actually teach you much. They're trying to get you to participate in their operation, whatever they have going, which is much more expensive than what you paid to be there. And that's just the way the business is. I think that's very misleading, but it is what it is. So for a new investor, what I did was I started giving out this guide. And when I would go and speak at these residential or not resident, these real estate conferences, I would always meet people afterwards that really didn't know what questions to ask when it came to investing in real estate or participating in any type of educational platform to learn how to invest in real estate. So I told them, look, there's four things that the entire world of real estate boils down to. It's four questions that every real estate investor has to master. And this logo on my head is the foundation of that. 4 Data Points Academy, it's four questions. And those four questions are: when you're considering a subject property, what does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when we're done? How much income can it generate? And I did a whole guide analyzing those questions. It took me a few hours to do it, but I did it with the sole intent of giving it to people for free so they can't get in trouble. I also started using the guide a lot more when I was doing things like this. Like today, I'm going to teach you some real estate investing stuff you would normally have to pay for. My belief is if you teach people what real estate investing is really about, when they're looking for a mentor, they'll appreciate a mentor after they know what it is. If you don't know what it is, you're not going to appreciate a mentor. So I don't want to have conversations with a bunch of people calling me saying, hey, I want you to be my mentor. And it's when I say it starts at $6,000, they're like, oh, that's expensive. Oh, then you have no idea what the value of it is because it should be 80 or 75% more than that. So they don't appreciate it. So I don't even take those calls. So I'll teach you for free what real estate investing is about. And then when you get out there and try to do it, when you call me, it's going to be a completely different type of conversation, right? Because now you appreciate it. So another reason that I was using this guide, this 4 Data Points guide, to give it out is because when I break down things like how to buy a house with no capital up front, how to buy an apartment building and structure the deal so you don't have to pay up front, you can pay out of your exit strategy. I don't want people getting false confidence. So I give them that guide so that they can analyze it to the best of their ability, and it'll force them to uncover information they may not have known to ask about. So 4 Data Points guide, you guys can just hit me up and I'll go ahead and make sure everybody has it. Again, it's free, but just because it's free, don't interpret that as it not having value. All right. So those questions: what does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? That's what we're going to master. Okay. And when we go over those today, and if you guys on TikTok can share the room, I'd appreciate it. Again, the more exposure we get, the more opportunities that I can create for other people, and the more free stuff that I'll be able to do. So if it's not too much trouble, go ahead and share the room. I'll take all questions. So on TikTok, occasionally I'll just invite you guys up. You don't have to come up, but just because I'm not always paying attention to the requests, I'll invite you guys up, and you can come up and you can ask a question, and I'll go ahead and get it answered for you. All right. Now, I'm going to bring James in a second because the topic is buying your first property, and I'm getting ready to. I'm going to go to James and ask him what position do people have to be in to buy their first investment property, not their first property to live in, their first investment property. So, James, uh, hey, go ahead and shed some light on that question for us, because you work with a lot of the financing for the folks in our group. So, what can a person expect when they are looking to buy their first investment property?
All right. Well, so first of all, how do I sound?
You sound fine. You sound good.
All right, fine. Okay, um, so a couple things. Um, there's a couple ways that people typically finance their deals. You can use. So first of all, you need money, right? You got to pay for the property, and then typically you want to make the property worth more than it's currently worth when you buy it. That's kind of how we're going to make money as real estate investors, right? And so that's typically going to happen through a rehab, right? Through renovating the property, and so you got to pay for that. So you can either have the money, right? So if you've got the cash, and a lot of people finance that through, maybe they've got a 401k, maybe they've got a HELOC, and they take some funds from their own, from their some property, some existing property that they have. Maybe they just have some cash that's there, but you can have cash, all right? And if you've got some cash, great. Um, that enables you to move quickly and get things done. All right, great. But you can use other people's money, right? And that's also good. It's good to use other people's money. It's less risk, right? You're not risking your own money. And so what most people do is they use hard money. And so hard money is financing. We call it hard money. There's a whole bunch of historical stuff that who cares? None of that matters. It's just financing, right? It's almost like financing your personal property at this in this day and age. But their requirements are a little different. And so there's some personal requirements, right? So there's some things they're going to ask of you, right? So they're typically going to ask you to have some good credit, right? Now, there are some lenders that will go down to, maybe a 600 credit score. There's some lenders that don't even look at your credit. All right, not a ton in this day and age, but the vast majority of hard money lenders are going to ask you to have some decent credit. Okay, now they don't typically look in depth at your credit profile. They just typically want a good credit score, right? And so, what is a good credit score? Anywhere from a 660, 680 is kind of usually their bottom line. All right, but there's some that go below that, but that's typically what they're going to ask is, hey, they want to see that you've got some good credit, and if you've got better credit, really good credit, above 720, 740, that's even better. Helps you get better terms, right? But they're just looking for a score, right? Next thing that they're going to look for, typically they don't lend to your person. There's some that do. Okay, none of this stuff is like hunt set in stone. Remember, hard money lenders can do what they want. All right, they're not like Bank of America where they have what is it called, Freddie and Fannie Mac, that sort of
Fannie Mae
stuff.
and Freddie Mac. Yep.
Yeah, that sort of stuff, right? They can make their own rules, okay? And so these are some general rules that I'm giving you. They're not hard and fast, but this is generally how it works. Now, so again, they don't typically gonna lend to you personally, even though they do ask you to have good credit. They are typically going to lend to your business,
Hmm.
okay? So they're gonna want to see that you have an LLC or a corporation, some sort of entity structure. Okay, they're gonna want to see that you have that. It doesn't matter how long you've had it. You could have set it up yesterday. They just want to see that you have that. and they're gonna want you to have all the documentation for that. All right, and this is one of the places where people end up getting caught up and stuff takes a long time because there can be a lot of documentation that they're asking for, and sometimes people they don't know. So here's the documentation they're going to ask for, and it can vary by state with what the name of it is, but it's basically like this. They're going to want to see your articles of incorporation. Sometimes that can be called a certification, or um, there's different names for that based on the state, right? But they want the articles of incorporation. That's what they want to see. Okay, and so the next thing that they want is your operating agreement. Okay, your operating agreement. Now, that needs to be signed, by the way. A lot of times when people set this up, they don't sign it. Okay, they want that to be signed. Okay, the next thing that they may ask you for is a certificate of good standing. Okay, and again, in different states, it could be called something different, but it's the same purpose. They want a certificate of good standing. Okay, now let's say that you have a Wyoming LLC. A lot of people set their business up in Wyoming or Delaware or Las Vegas, right? Or Las Vegas, the city, Nevada. All right, but the property you're buying is in a different state. Well, then in that case, they're going to want that you to foreign register your business in the state that property is in. So they're going to want to see proof of that. Okay, so that's what they're going to want to see. All right. So the next thing that they're going to want to see is possibly, depending on the lender, some money, some funds. All right. So they may ask you for some bank statements. Okay, and so they want to see that you've got some money that is around the amount of money that you're going to need for the deal. All right. So let's say, for example, your down payment that they require is $25,000. Well, they're going to want you to show them that you got $25,000. Again, not all lenders are this way. In fact, the main lender that I use doesn't do this. They don't care. As long as you bring $25,000 to the table, they don't really care. But a lot of lenders do. They want to see that you've got that $25,000. They're going to want you to show it in some form or fashion. Some lenders do what we call sourcing, right? In other words, they're going to say, "Hey, where did you get the $25,000?" Okay, so if you've got some large deposits or something like that, they might say, "Hey, show us where you got those large deposits." Look, don't worry. You don't need to remember any of the stuff I told you. Okay, a couple other things that I forgot. They're also going to, and this surprises people, you're going to need to get insurance on that property. Okay, the property that you're about to buy, you need to get insurance on it. Now, many lenders will allow you to pay for the insurance in the process of purchasing the property. In other words, when you go to the table and you sign, part of your down payment is that insurance premium. They're going to include that, comes on the HUD, it's part of the deal. But some of them don't. Some of them want to see a paid receipt that you've already purchased that insurance. So you're going to have to get that quote, and you're going to have to get some insurance. That surprises people. You're going to have to get title. Some lenders make you go get that. Some lenders, anyways. But you're going to have to get a title company. You're going to have to open up title. All right. So
real quick, James. So two things. One is the sourcing. He was mentioning some lenders want to source your deposits. Most of the asset-based lenders that I've worked with don't want to do that. There are lenders that do asset-based and conventional lending. Most of the time, they'll want to source your money to see where it came from, and those same lenders may also have a seasoning requirement requiring you to have had those funds for at least 2 months. So they'll ask for 2 months bank statements. Keep in mind, that's typically a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac requirement. So those lenders that do both are typically a little more strict. Now, with respect to the insurance, you can get the quote, and then you can have what we call an insurance binder. So they'll go ahead and put the insurance in place and wait for your payment at closing. So it'll be a part of your closing costs. So you don't have to, as my daughter on Michaela on Facebook. So you don't have to pay for it out of your pocket most of the time, because you can't insure a property that you don't own. But they'll go ahead and set the insurance up, make it part of your closing costs, and then the closing company will go ahead and send them a check. And if it ends up not closing, then they'll go ahead and void the insurance. So just keeping those things in mind. Asset-based lenders or hard money qualify you primarily on the equity in the property and or the income that it generates, depending on the mortgage product. But it's not your job to know all of that if you are in any type of program, right? So we don't expect anybody to know any of that when they're getting their first investment property. We are supposed to guide you through the entire process, not just underwriting the deal, but helping you understand the mechanics and holding your hand through the process so you don't get caught off guard and managing your expectations. So go ahead, James. I just wanted to note those few things.
Yeah. So actually, I was just getting ready. Last thing I was getting ready to say is kind of what you just said, which is you don't really need to know any of that because they're going to send you a really long list. The second you say, "Hey, I want to buy a property," they're going to say, "Hey, great, fill out this application." And the second you do that, they're going to send you a really long list of stuff to give them, and
Yes.
it's all the stuff that I just said. So you don't need to remember any of that. Now, here is the most important thing for you to remember. It's what is important in the process, right? What should you be thinking about as an investor? This is the most important stuff that I try to get folks to understand. What we're used to thinking about as consumers of loans is interest rates, right? If I was to ask you, hey, you're going to get a loan for a deal, what's the most important thing to make sure it's a good loan? Most people will say, well, the interest rate. And what I'm going to tell you is that's not the most important thing. In fact, it's probably not in my top five. All right. So I'm going to tell you uh, my top five, or three, or four, or five. All right. We'll see how long my list is. All right. Number one, can they get the deal done?
Yes, that
Okay.
is the most important
That is
lender
the single most
characteristic.
important thing. Can they get the deal done? Let me tell you, folks, that everybody's going to promise the moon and the sky and the stars, right? And they're going to show you term sheets that look amazing. But if they can't get the deal done, who cares? None of it matters. They can't get the deal done, right? So, what's the biggest determining factor if they can get the deal done? The guidelines, understanding the guidelines. So, what does that mean? What does the deal look like? Right? So, every lender has a set of guidelines which tells them, hey, this is the kind of deal we will accept. All right. And so that has to do with how you've purchased the deal, where you've purchased the deal, the structure of your deal. For example, does the lender even buy deals where you are, right? Will they even do it in your neighborhood, state, city, wherever, right? Some lenders won't do deals, won't finance in a particular state. Some lenders will finance in a particular state, but in that neighborhood, they have particular guidelines for that neighborhood. They might say, oh yeah, well, like for example, I'll give you a real life example. There's several lenders who will say, hey, in Baltimore, all right, there's a certain neighborhood, a certain part of Baltimore, right, a certain zip code in Baltimore where we're going to say, hey, we need the property value to be at least $100,000. All right. And so if you're buying a property that's below $100,000, we're not interested in financing the deal. And so you might get involved in doing this deal and they've got your term sheets and everything's great. You get 2 weeks into it and they're like, oh, yeah, we can't do this deal because this is in this neighborhood that we don't do it in. So, oops, now you've wasted 2 weeks, right?
After you pay for the appraisal sometimes.
Right after you, right. So let's get into the guidelines, right? Some lenders say now there's all these initials, okay? That eventually you're going to want to make sure you remember, right? CLTV, LTV, ARV, all this sort of stuff, right? So some lenders say, okay, so if you take the purchase price and how much your renovation is, it's all got to be like we don't care about anything as long as it's less than 65%. Okay. Some lenders will say, hey, um, we'll go up to 80%, but your renovation cannot be more than the purchase price, right? So again, if the person you're working with doesn't understand the guidelines, like who cares what the interest rate is, right? Like those things have nothing to do with interest rates, but they have to do with whether you can get your deal done. And now that is the most important thing is the guidelines. Can you get the deal done? Like another thing is prepayment penalties. Like, what is your plan for the property, right? So if you've got a really high prepayment penalty, that might cost you $15,000, and you didn't think about that, right? So you can go to another lender with a high interest rate with no prepayment penalty. You just saved yourself $15,000.
Yeah.
Um,
Hey, James, real
so
quick, let me touch on that because you
yeah,
said something a second ago about the rehab cannot be more than the cost of the property. That is a common item for most lenders guidelines, and they don't publicize it. So when you guys are out there getting these cheap properties and getting these tax deeds for $1,000 and $2,500, that ends up costing you more than not having have purchased it at all, because now you own this property that you got for cheap. And you guys hear me say all the time, just because you can get a property for cheap doesn't mean it's a good investment. Most of the time it's a bad investment. So even if you write off the $2,500 as a loss, now you own the property. So if there's tenants in there, you are now responsible for making that property habitable. And if you bought it for 2,500 and you think you're going to go get a company to finance a $60,000 rehab on a $2,500 property, good luck. Most of the time, it's not going to happen. Not to say that there's not a lender out there that won't do it, but you're going to have to get really, really creative to do that. There's a term called asymmetrical risk reward, and investors should understand what that means also. Asymmetrical risk reward means we don't want to risk a lot just to gain a little. And lenders look at that the same way. So just because you can buy a property for cheap does not mean it's a good investment. And you're on the hook for making it habitable if there's a tenant in it, right? So let's say you buy a property for 2,500 bucks. Most of you guys are getting these from tax deeds, tax certificates, once they can be converted to tax deeds, and there's a tenant in there. Well, now you fall under tenant landlord law. So even though you got the property for 2,500 bucks, let's say the heat goes out. Who do you think is responsible for fixing that heat? You are, as the landlord. And in certain areas, if you don't, they can petition you. They can petition the city against you, right? Or the rent board, depending on what location you're in. So be very, very careful when you guys are buying these cheap properties, and make sure you run the 4 data points and ask those 4 questions. What is the cost? What is the cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? Because just because you get a property for next to nothing, it can cost you a lot more in the future if you don't know what you're doing. So, go ahead, James.
hey, along those same lines, here's another one that gets newer investors, and this is huge for newer investors. So, a lot of lenders, if you are new, okay, if you don't have, because experience is a big deal for investors, okay, it's one of the criteria for investors. If you have no experience, they may not lend to you. And then one is a threshold for them. So if you've got one, great, they'll lend to you. And then three is another threshold, and five is another threshold, 10, 15, right? You get the point, right? So if you've got no or little experience, they're going to have guidelines. They're not published, like Otis talked about how much of a rehab they will let you do. And you're not going to find that out until you're all the way at the end of the process and they deny your loan. Okay, so you don't find
Yes.
this out until 3 weeks into the process. So if you're doing an addition and you're a brand new investor, that loan could likely be denied because they're going to say you don't have experience. We don't trust you to be able to do this big of an investment, right? So there's something else. Will the loan get done? So I was going to say, what should you be thinking about when you're going to find a lender or financing? This is number one thing: is will the loan get done? Can it get done in the first place? So you need to understand what is the structure of your deal, what is entailed, what needs to happen, and does that fit with this particular lender? That's number one. Number two, speed. All right. How
Speak.
long is it going to take? Here's what we got to understand, folks. Time truly, truly is money. Okay. You understand that the longer something takes, the more likely it is that something's going to go wrong, number one. And the longer something takes, the more likely it is that things are going to be more expensive. And the longer things take, there's going to be problems. There's always problems when things take a long time. Okay. So speed, right? Like there's lenders. I have a lender who'll get things done. I can get a loan done in 7 days every single time. They'll get it done in 17. They're expensive as all heck. But if I know I need this done, if I know this deal needs to get done right away, I'm going to them, right? Because it'll get done in 7 days. They'll push everything through, right? I got another lender that I don't understand why every single time it takes a month drives me crazy, right? But they get my deals done, right? So speed is really really important. That should be important to you, okay? Um, Third is how cost, okay? Loan cost. I don't mean interest rates, okay? That's typically not most of your loan cost. Uh, Loan cost comes in terms of a few things. It comes in terms of points and fees, okay? It comes in terms of, um, I said it earlier actually, is, prepayment penalties, okay? Like what's the total loan cost and
Yes.
compare all of that, right? Um, and then, and actually probably that's probably below what I'm getting ready to say. And the next thing I'm getting ready to say, which I think is more important, is relationship. Okay, what is the relationship you have with the lender?
Yes.
Here's why. The more deals you do with a particular lender, the more they're going to push your deals through, the more better terms you get. It is very valuable to have a long term relationship with a lender. Okay. I have lenders that I can call and ask favors. Okay. Uh, Just straight up. I have lenders that can say, hey, man, I know this is not within your guidelines. I really need to get this deal done. Can you do it for me? And they'll do it. All right, man. I got you. Okay. I, I I've had pain in the rear clients, right? who, who who I've who I've had to call in some favors and say, hey, man, I know I apologize that this has been an issue, but can we push this through? And they've done it for me because I've taken several deals through this lender. So relationship is really really important, and I can't stress that enough. If you continue, if a lot of people will keep trying to get cheaper and looking for the dollar. If you keep trying to save money and that's all that's important to you over and value that over relationships, in the long term, you're going to spend more money. You're just going to spend more money, and your business is going to be more difficult. You're going to find that you have more complications. What you find when you value relationships is a lot of problems go away before they get to you
Yes.
because people care about you and they will make things not a big deal in the first place, or they will solve a problem before they get to you, or when they talk to you about something, they'll have a solution in mind. But people just in general will work with you when you value relationships. So those are the four things, and kind of in that order.
Yeah.
Um, and I never worry about interest rates. I could care less.
Well, it's the product. So this is you guys remember the real estate debacle of 2008, where anybody could qualify for a mortgage. The issue wasn't the mortgage product that everybody was saying was so bad. The issue was people were using the wrong loan for what they were trying to do, and you can do that in flipping homes too. You should not have a prepayment penalty if you are flipping a home. You should not. And you can typically see that on their website, certain mortgage products. You'll see it on the term sheet because they already know the whole goal is to dispose of the asset after you add value. So I'm okay with the prepayment penalty. if I'm doing a cash out refinance and it's a long-term asset. So it's a long-term hold. So what's going to happen is typically they'll have what you call a step down prepayment penalty, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What that means is, the first year, if you sell it or refinance it, you got to pay 5% of the loan amount, right? 5%. The second year, 4%. If you do it after the third year, 3%, fourth year, 2%, fifth year, 1 point, right? 1%, and then it goes away. Right. Now, if it's a long-term hold, then I'm okay with that. And if it's cash flowing and I didn't, overextend myself, to get it done, or I didn't get ripped off on the interest rate, I'm just going to keep it. So I don't really care about the prepayment penalty. Now, another thing is this is a lot to remember when you are in the process of getting financing for in investment property as a real estate investor, not like a second home that where you go to Chase or
Well, hey, so just real quick.
go ahead.
So people need to. So I've had, and this is the reason I brought it up. Often people will send me, or people will call me and reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about this loan," or da, da, da. I talked to such person, and I'll say, "Oh, great, send me the term sheet."
Mhm.
And I'm looking at the term sheet, and I always look for a prepayment penalty, and you'd be shocked at how many times there is one there. Um, Here's the other thing that is important. And so let's say even if it is a long-term hold, right?
Mhm.
You need to think about how long you're going to keep the property,
Mhm.
right? Like just because you're going to rent it, right? You need to ask yourself the question, you know, is it possible that I'm going to sell this in a couple of years, 2 years, or is it possible that I'm going to refinance it, right? Like, are those things? You need to ask yourself that question, and so you need to always look for that. Here's the other thing: when you're doing a flip, what's the term of the loan? Okay, that's another one that's huge. Okay, now when I'm doing a loan for somebody, I typically default to 12 months. Okay, a lot of people default to 6 months. What if your rehab's not done in 6 months? I've had people waiting on permits for 6 months. So you, it is next to impossible to get yourself out of a fix and flip loan when the rehab's not done within 6 months. What are you going to do? How are you going to get yourself out of that loan? You can't refinance out of it. The rehab's not done. So how long is the term of your loan is another thing that's critically important. Like I've put people in 18 months loans. If I think your rehab is really complicated, do an 18-month loan. So the term of your loan, how long the loan is another thing that's really critical. Again, especially for a newer investor. Recognize that if you're newer, give yourself some grace and a buffer and say, hey, some things might go wrong here that might take a little bit longer. Some things might change. I might change my mind about some things. You just never know what's going to happen, especially if you're inexperienced.
Right. And real quick, James, I also see people leave out. Okay, let's say the rehab is done in 6 months, but people don't calculate the time it takes to sell the property, the time it takes that it's going to be on the market, and the time it takes that their new buyer to qualify. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not selling to another investor, you're selling to somebody that is going to buy or utilize financing for their personal residence. And if you have an understanding of how financing works, when people are buying for their personal residence, most of the time they are looking at that person's debt to income ratio and they've got to go through underwriting and all of those things, which can take 45 days. So, and that's assuming you complete your project and you get an offer the next day. Most of the time, especially people that are not experienced, part of not being experienced is trying to get too much for your property and not understanding what that does to your listing after a certain time. It becomes a stale listing and it has a negative impact. So people don't walk it to the market. Walking it to the market means, all right, I'm going to list my property at 250,000. In 14 days, I evaluate the traffic, see what the responses were, and I'll drop it down 15,000. And then I'll let the information that I collect during that time, I'll probably give it another 10 days, and then I'll drop it down another 15,000. Most people won't drop it down that much. They're like, okay, let's drop it down 5,000. Okay, let's drop it down 5,000 again. So that's a lack of experience. It also means that they're not taking proper guidance from the agent or broker that's listing their property. So when you're calculating time, you have, let's start from the beginning. Let's say the day you find the property, it'll probably take you 30 to 45 days to get in there. 30 to 4 within that 30 to 45 days, you should already be planning your rehab. You should have already done your due diligence. You should already have contractors on standby. You should already have your scope of work done. So the day you close, they can get in there and start working. Then you calculate the amount of time that it's going to take to finish the project. Then you calculate the amount of time that you believe it's going to be on the market. And the way that you do that is, remember the 4 data points. What does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? If you're flipping a property, number 3 is going to be the most important to you. And it's something that you're going to have to revisit multiple times during the project. What's it going to be worth when I'm done? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? In another 3 weeks, what's it going to be worth when I'm done? In another month, what's it going to be worth when I'm done? Because that number changes. What it's going to be worth when you're done in the beginning. What's up, Dwayne? What it's going to be worth when you're done, when you start the project, is not what it's going to be worth when you're done, when you're finished, especially if it's a 6-month project. And this is why. Because you determine what it's going to be worth when you're done based on what comparable properties are selling for. Well, guess what? During that time frame that you're working on the property, more properties are selling, more transactions are happening. So you have to continuously reevaluate what it's going to be. Oh, I thought I invited Dwayne. What it's going to be worth. Now, when you get close to completion of your project, you're going to look at comparables to see what your property is worth. It could be more than you thought it was going to be. It could also be less. Now, remember, being a real estate investor, you have to look at everything. So in addition to looking at comparables, you have to look at the seasonality. You have to manage your expectations. If you are starting a project in June and it's not going to be on the market until November, well, what happens during the holidays? Transactions slow down. People aren't moving. People are preoccupied with the holidays. So that's going to impact your price. So you have to look at timing. You have to look at your internal timing when you're starting and when you're going to finish. And you have to continuously look at the last 2 data points. And which one you look at out of the 2 depends on what you're going to do with the property. If you're selling the property, you got to look at what it's going to be worth when you're done. If you're renting the property out, you got to look at how much income that it can generate. So those things are really, really important. So I just wanted to add that in, James. But go ahead, sir.
I think that's it, man. I think that kind of sums it up, man.
Yeah. All right. So we're talking about how to buy your first investment property, and most of the buying part has to do with the financing. Working on the actual project is something a little different. So we'll take it in a couple phases, right? And thank you, folks, for sharing the room. Again, I feel weird asking you guys to do that, but the more eyes we get on us, the more opportunities that we can create for not just my students, but for all the people in our general circle. Now, when you apply for a loan from a hard money lender, we call them asset-based lenders, it works like this. And you heard James and I talking about, you don't have to remember all of this stuff. The good thing about the financing and having all of these groups that you're working with, your lender, your insurance company, the escrow company, or the closing company, is because if you get too far off base, they will bring you back because they will not let you go through with it. For example, let's look at your application with a hard money lender. So what happens is you talk to somebody like myself or James, you say, hey, I want to do some finance. I want to get financing for this project. We go ahead, find which lender is going to be best suited with the path of least resistance to get you moving on your project. And then we start the process. You fill out an application and then you upload the purchase agreement. Okay. The signed purchase agreement, which is an offer. You can get that in e-forms. All right. I'm a real estate investor. I don't use an agent on my purchases 99% of the time. I don't. I'm a licensed real estate broker in a couple states. Even as a licensed real estate broker, I still don't use agents in states that I'm not licensed in. And you don't have to. You only have to have a license if you're representing other people. You don't have to have a license to sell your own property and to buy your own property. So you fill out a loan application online, and it's going to ask you to upload the signed purchase agreement. And you're going to get an automated email that says something like processing at abclender.com. That's just acknowledging your submission. That's the first step. And then you're going to get an email, if not later on in that day, right? Depends on what time you submitted. Then you're going to get an email that says, hey, it's probably going to be from an actual person. Hey, we got your email, we got your submission, and they're going to have a laundry list of items that you need to get together. Now, they don't expect you to have all of these items. What they're showing you on that laundry list is these are the things that you are going to have to get in line. All right. Now, they break it down into 3 categories, and then there's a couple of one-off. The first category is they want to know about you. They want to know about your experience. They want to know about any real estate you own. They want to know about, current transactions, right? And they're going to send you whatever media, whatever format that you need to fill that information out on. Most of the time, it's just a spreadsheet called the Schedule of Real Estate Owned. If you're brand new and you don't own any real estate and you've never done a transaction, that's fine. Leave it blank. The next thing they're going to ask about is your entity. James mentioned some of these before. If you're using an LLC, they're going to want to know about your LLC. They're going to want to see your formation documents. They're going to want to see a certificate of good standing, which James mentioned before. But keep in mind, if that LLC has not been in existence for 12 months, most of the time you're not going to be able to get a certificate of good standing because you haven't gone through the cycle to where you have to do your first reporting, tax reporting, and all those things. The hard money lenders know that. So you would just tell them the entity has only been around for 6 months. All right. The third thing is the most important. Well, if you don't fulfill the first 2 things, you're not getting it anyway. But the first thing is what's going to impact your money the most. They're going to want to know about the project. When you give them the information about the project, it is very hard to change it. Now, the most important part of your project is what you're going to do to it. So I want to focus on one thing, okay? And the other one-offs, they're going to want your insurance. If you don't have it, they're going to want you to go get it. And they're going to want to know who the closing company is you're using, because the closing company is going to be facilitating all the communication and doing due diligence on their end. So let's talk about a scope of work. If you're flipping houses, and I'll just reiterate, everybody should know how to flip houses. I wouldn't flip houses as a career because it could be an emotional roller coaster. It could be backbreaking. Ultimately, I want everybody to get into apartment buildings, multifamily commercial assets. The road to wealth is quickest through multifamily commercial assets, but you should know how to flip houses because that education you can carry over into the multifamily stuff. Dwayne, am I messing you up? Am I messing you up? I'm inviting you, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. All right, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm gonna keep trying. All right, he may be busy. All right. All right. So, and anybody else that wants to come up and ask questions, feel free to do that. So your scope of work, this is what people do that gets them in a lot of trouble. I'm a new investor. I just got my contract accepted on this property. I want to meet with some contractors. I want to bring them to the property so they can give me an estimate. Okay. Now, when I teach my students, that's okay to do, but you are not going to rely on that information. You just want to get their insight as to some of the things that you may want to consider, because a contractor may help you see things a little bit differently, right? Like, let's say you have an idea for the master bathroom shower, and you say, I was on Pinterest and I want to get it with the glass enclosures where glass meets glass. And instead of the shower, the faucet coming out of the wall, I want it coming out of the ceiling, and I want it to fall like rain, right? I did that with my house. And the difference in cost in having glass meet glass and relocating the the plumbing to rain on me, right? By the way, how am I going to clean it? It's a whole bunch of problems. A contract, say I got a discount because I had a hookup with the contractors. So they came and they were doing all this stuff for me. It went from 7,000 to 17,000 by the time I was all said and done. Now the contractor should say, all right, well, we can do that, but it's going to be more expensive, and they should give you all the drawbacks and stuff to doing it. So it's okay for a contractor to come and look at what you're doing, but keep this in mind. If you do that and rely on that, and the contractor comes and says, okay, yeah, you want the kitchen done, you rehab, okay, cool. You want to do all the flooring, all right. We're going to upgrade the plumbing and electrical, all right, cool, okay, that's good. I could probably do that for about 60,000. And then you run back and you go ahead and submit that information to your lender, $60,000. Okay. And then during the project, you decide, hey man, we're starting to go, a little over budget. Let's go ahead and leave the bathrooms the way they are. And the contractor says, okay, that's fine. So instead of 60,000, it'll just be 55,000. Well, wait a minute. We're leaving the bathrooms the way they are. That only takes off $5,000. Well, yeah. So how do you dispute that? So this is what you should do. The first thing you do for your property when you are going to rehab it is you need to go in on your own. Now, we'll talk about having a home inspection next, but you need to go in on your own and take notes on every single thing that you believe needs to be fixed. I do this when I'm turning units, right? So if I have a tenant that moves out, I'll go out and I'll do this. So I'll walk room to room with my iPad and I'll note everything. Okay, flooring needs to be replaced, interior paint. We're going to replace the ceiling fan, replace the light switches and outlets, do a quick diagram, let them know, all right, outlets on this wall, this wall, this wall, this wall. Go into the master bathroom and just notes after notes after notes after notes, right? So observation is the first key. The second key is putting it in a format where you can hand it to somebody and they can give you pricing for each line item. Okay. Each line item. That's your scope of work. And I have a bunch of, tools and spreadsheets I give to my students to make it easy for them. Now, once you have each line item with pricing next to it, right? Now you have that. That's like your rehab Bible. And then you can submit your budget to your lender. Okay. That way, if you have to pivot, and a lot of times you do, maybe you're starting to run over budget, and there's a lot of reasons that you can run over budget, right? I don't care how good you are, it happens. Then you can start manipulating the line items to, stay within budget, right? And then you know how much of the adjustment to make. You can call your contractor and say, hey, I know we talked about doing whatever, new countertops in the kitchen, but, we're going over budget. Let's go ahead and leave them the way they are. Or I know we talked about replacing the cabinets. Let's go ahead and leave them the way they are. Let's just sand them and repaint them. And then you can track it, how much it's saving you, right? You can track how much it's saving you. So that is the most important part of your rehab. Where things go bad is people don't have an accurate scope of work, right? Accurate scope of work. And the rest of their documentation is suspect also. Now, and feel free, if you guys have questions, just let me know. Now, when you are doing a rehab project, there's 6 documents that you have to have. And I'm going to go through them. You guys that are in our real estate family, all the students, you guys already have this. This is a hiring a contractor lesson that has since been revised. Now, the 6 documents are as follows. The first one is your contractor agreement. The contractor agreement, you can only hold them accountable to what's on that piece of paper. You can only hold them accountable to what's on that piece of paper. Now, you can get contractor agreements anywhere, eForms, Rocket Lawyer, any of those things. Okay. You just have to make sure that you have the right language in there to protect you. Now, again, this is where having a mentor comes into play. You can't make your contractor agreement so airtight that no contractor is going to sign it. And even though we're inclined to do that, you got to have some balance. And the reason is the contractor is not going to take on that much liability. For example, if you say, hey, I'm specific about these materials, and if we go over the time frame, you have to start paying me. It's going to come off the last payment. Well, what if those materials are on back order? Or what if there's a delay that's no fault of the contractor? What if the permitting process in that one particular area is real slow? So there are things that can go bad that's of no fault of you or the contractor. So you have to extend some grace on your contractor agreement. Okay. Most of the time, when my students are doing their first contract, I'll just have them send it to me, and then I'll look at all the important parts. And if there's some language I think that they should have in it, I'll just draft the language and send it back to them. Say, hey, add this in under other terms. Okay. So the contractor agreement is the first thing. The scope of work is the second document that you have to have. And I'll say it again: people lose money because they have faulty scopes of work. Period. All right. Period. If you leave things up to common sense and they don't get done, it's your fault. It's not the contractor's fault. And James and I, we've worked with some people where, you know, they get the budget, they get the estimate, and then halfway through the job, they're like, "Hey, you're not going to replace the windows?" He said, "No, I didn't say that wasn't. I didn't say we were going to replace the windows." Well, surely you saw the condition of the windows and knew they needed to be replaced, or you're not going to paint the outside. So any of that confusion is your fault, not the contractor's fault. Thanks again for you folks that shared the room. It's much appreciated. All right. So those are the two documents. I'm on the contractor's contract.
Hey, oh,
Go ahead.
to your point about the windows, so there's a couple things that I find. Look, the contractor's trying to get the job. Okay, so when they give you that quote, you know that there's some things that they typically try to skimp on, and then later they know a lot of times they're gonna, and then sometimes they don't know your taste. So if you don't tell them, if you don't walk the property and tell them specifically this is what you want, they're trying to guess, right?
Mhm.
So Windows is one of those places where if they don't know what you want, they're just going to put the lowest common denominator. The other place is HVAC, especially depending on what area of the world you live in, right? What area of the country. So, like, if there's no central HVAC there, then you're probably not going to get an HVAC in the quote, right? Or you might get some window units or something like that. So that's another common area. Um, Doors, right? There's just some common areas where I see roof, right? You might need a new roof, but they might quote you for a repair. So there's some common things that you want to look for on the quote.
And how do you address that, James? So when that comes up, because you've had conversations with, well, we've had conversations with contractors, and there were times where I got so frustrated, you know, I got banned from talking to one contractor. So how do you address a dispute like that?
It's tough because, to your point, everything's your fault, and so I recognize that. You know, you need to know what you want, and you need to look at the quote, the scope of work, before you approve it. And you need to look at those areas. You need to look at the roof, and you need to ask the question ahead of time. Hey, do we need a new roof? Or is this quote that you're giving me, is this for a repair or is this for a replacement? Hey, when we look at HVAC, it just says HVAC, but it doesn't say what kind of HVAC. What does that mean? Is this the duct work? Is this window units? Is
Yes.
this what does this include? You know, you need to get specific on those things. Um, and then so now let's say there's some dispute after the fact. Well, then you just got to get granular with the contractor and say, hey, man, some of this stuff is common sense. Okay. You see these windows, right? You're the one telling me the windows need to be replaced, yet you didn't put it in the quote. So riddle me that, right? So, let's come to an agreement here. And here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing, folks. And this is really important. You can say, "Hey, we've got some quote unquote legal standing that doesn't get your rehab done."
Yeah.
You want to try to come to an amicable understanding with your contractor to try to get a rehab to get your thing done. Now, here's the other thing that you can do as well: break your contract up into smaller pieces,
Yeah.
right? If you do one large contract so that you end up having to give one big giant deposit, right? And then there's a problem, you've just given away a whole bunch of money,
Yeah.
right? But if you either break up the contract into smaller bits or break up the payments such that you don't have to give big deposits, right? That can save you. But even the reason I say break up the contracts instead of just breaking up the deposits is that if you have a contract for the whole deal, the contractor can have some standing.
Hmm.
So, so those are just two ways to mitigate that.
Right. And we've had quite a bit of those conversations. Now, um, I'm wondering if I want to explore that. Let's talk. Okay, so let me finish. So we talk about the contractor agreement, and for my students, if they don't know how to do one, I most of the time I'll do it for them, or I'll have them give it their best attempt, and then send it to me, and then I'll go ahead and make any corrections or update it as needed. Now, the second thing is the scope of work, which is your roadmap for the entire project. Keep in mind when you submit that scope of work and you have your budget established with your lender, they're going to qualify you based on that. So lenders are very, very strict about changing that. They're even strict about swapping line items. So let's say you've allocated 9,000 for flooring and 4,000 for appliances. And then you're doing the flooring and then you find some other issues and it goes from 9,000 to 13,000. So you say, all right, I'm just going to pull the $4,000 from the appliances and add it to the flooring. It's still the same amount of money. Lender shouldn't mind. Well, the lender will mind most of the time. They're only going to reimburse you $9,000 for that flooring. So that's an issue that you're going to have to contend with. All right. So you've got to stick to it. That's why it's so important. You got to stick to that scope of work. The third thing is, and this is how I control a rehab from 2,500 miles away. And this is also what James alluded to, the payment schedule. The payment schedule puts you in a position to keep the contractor working for the next check. And this is all outlined in our hiring a contractor guide. So if you're one of my students, you guys have access to this already. By the way, it's been updated and it's in the portal. So the payment schedule puts you in a position to where not only can you control the property from a distance, but it also makes sure that you don't give them too much upfront. What happens is many contractors, and even though, there's good contractors out there and there's bad contractors. So when I say contractors, I'm just talking about contractors that I've experienced through my real estate investing career. I'm not saying they're all bad, just like there's probably twice as many shady investors out there as there are shady contractors. So the payment schedule, if it's managed correctly, you never find yourself in a position to where if you have to fire somebody, they owe you money. That's the important part. Okay. So contractor agreement, scope of work, payment schedule. I use the one in eForms because the contractor agreement has the payment schedule built into it. Okay. The fourth thing you need is the insurance. The contractor's insurance, not the insurance that you have on the property. Okay. Contractor's insurance, you need them to have general liability and workman's comp. What happens if one of their people gets hurt on the job? If there's no insurance in place with that contractor, who do you think they're coming after? All right. So make sure you understand the insurance and don't just ask them if they have it. Get a copy of their insurance certificate. And if you really want to protect yourself, add your company as additional insured on the insurance certificate. Now, I'm not talking about the insurance that you get, the homeowner's insurance. I'm talking about the contractor insurance requirement. Okay. The fifth thing you get their W-9. All right. Anything that you have to pay a contractor for, you've got to get the tax benefit from that. Right. So you got to report that. So make sure you get your W-9 and you'll be protected. Now, you have to get a W-9 for anybody you pay $600 or above to. So even I get a W-9 if I'm going to be working with even if I only give them $100, I'm going to get a W-9 because if I work with that person again, over the course of a year, it may total out to 600. Then after the end of the year, I can just go ahead and send them a 1099. All right. Now, the last document is what we call a lien release. So you have to understand what a lien release is. A lien release is the document that says, hey, the contractor performed their work and I paid them. Everybody takes their ball, goes home. The world is a better place. So if the contractor comes back to you for non-payment and tries to say, hey, you didn't pay me, you've got the signed lien release. And they can't put what we call a mechanics lien, a lien on the property for the amount that you owe them. Okay. So there's two types of lien releases. And again, if you guys are in a real estate educational program, or you have a mentor, they should be guiding you through all of this from start to finish. Okay, start to finish. Now, once you have the lien release in place, you're pretty much good to go. You can give the lien release before you give the final check, or you can give the lien release after every payment to the contractor. Just bear in mind, anytime you do a draw from the anytime you do a draw from the lender, a draw is basically you pay the contractor and the lender reimburses you for it. Anytime you do a draw, the lender's going to want a lien release. So just make sure you understand what that is. Okay. Now, is there any questions about those 6 documents? They are imperative. It's imperative that you know what they are: contract or agreement, scope of work, payment schedule, insurance, W-9, lien release. All right. I don't know why I'm just listening. I know you guys can't type that fast or talk. James, you got anything you wanna add to that, sir?
No, sir, I do not.
All right. Now, you guys heard me say that. Okay. All right. You hold on. Okay. So, God, I forgot what my train of thought was. I forgot what I was going to get into. I got some text messages. All right. Now we start talking about getting into multifamily commercial apartment buildings. You'll hear me say repeatedly that's always the end goal, right? You start flipping houses, and you should all know how to flip houses if you're going to be a real estate investor, because there may be times you have to go back to doing that just to generate some cash. So, I've got multiple projects. I have one project that I'm way over budget because I had to make a decision. It's a multifamily project, and I had to choose to pause and pivot for safety issues, or risk it and go ahead. But the other people that I had investing with me are investing as lenders on the project for a return. The liability is on me 100%. It is basically a project where we are adding a second story, and we're going to add some more residential units. But when I had, and the original contractor said it was good, we got the plans, you're going to be good to go. But I had my architect and structural engineer come out just to verify, and they said, look, I don't think this first floor was built to have another floor on it. So we dug a little deeper, and they said, I don't know, I probably wouldn't risk it. So I said, all right, pause. And that pause was set off a chain reaction for things that put me in the hole, over $100,000. And I'm still not even, we're still trying to get that project moving forward. So some things work out, some things don't, right? If I would have let that project go if I didn't have other people investing with me. But, it is what it is. So there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you're looking at these projects. One is your experience level. If you are brand new, don't take on a huge project. Just take on a smaller project. And if the cost of materials is very, very expensive, don't take on a huge project. Take on a smaller project, right? If you're not comfortable enough to do a project on your own, do a group project. So I do that for my students. I'll take 7 or 8 of them and put them together. I'll take the lead on a flip, and they get 90% of the return. They get 100% if we start getting too close to breaking even. I'll take 10%, but if we get too close to breaking even, I'll just give up my 10%. So I've done projects where I made nothing on it, right? So, but that gives them the experience. And now that they've done a project, even if we just break even, now they've got one under their belt, and they can go and get financing, and they're in a better situation, right? Because that's how we do it. We're trying to turn everybody into advanced real estate investors. And anytime I can jump in and make it easier for folks, then I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right. Now, I'll do a quick room reset. Folks, my name is Otis James. The educational platform is the 4 Data Points Academy. It is 4datapoints.com, the number 4DATAPOINTS. Tavares, if you could put that in the chat, that would be dope. We have a workshop, a multifamily workshop coming up May 17th. I'm only taking 20 people. I'm not doing a whole big situation there. So you can go ahead and reach out to me if you're interested in that. I'll send you the registration link, and it's going to get into how to underwrite a multifamily commercial deal and how to approach the rehab for a multifamily commercial deal. I'm a value add investor. One of my criteria is I need to get all the money back out of the deal that I put into it. And I'm going to show people how to do that. If you guys are interested in mentorship, some of the things that distinguish our company from other companies is we don't have an end date. The reason we don't have an end date is because I already know that you can't take 6 weeks and then 6, 7, 8 weeks and be a seasoned real estate investor. You can get the educational component, but I know you're not going to be effective when you get out there because most of the learning comes with the practical application and the support you get afterwards. So when people go through our 7 or 8 week fundamentals, the learning starts after that when we get out there and actually start doing the stuff. Then we can also fine tune their knowledge base so we know where to coach them, what areas to coach them on so they can be successful. So whether it takes 2 months or 2 years, once people come in with us, they're with us for as long as we exist, and we give them support for as long as we exist. We also have a business entrepreneurship, let's call it that, entrepreneurship accelerator called Venture U, where we are doing a retreat in Medellin, Colombia in Q4 of this year. I think we're only taking 17 people for that. And we are going to have every specialist for every aspect of your business. I'll be talking about real estate, but this is general entrepreneurship for any business. So if you guys are interested in that, reach out to me. You can go to ventureu.live to see more about it and get a brochure. Venture U is spelled VENTURE, the letter U.live, and that information you can find on there. Oh, thank you, Tavares. He put the information up there. So that being said, let's get back into it. Let's get back into it. All right. Now we talked about we talked about the rehab process, kind of the framework for the rehab process, and we focused on the lending side. But when somebody is a new real estate investor, because it can get so overwhelming, there are 12 things, 3 groups of 4 that you're going to be focusing on, and that's going to be your whole world of real estate, right? Just 12 things. 4 of those things are the 4 data points. See, I gave you an easy one. 4 data points. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the cost? What is the cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? 4 things. See, now you only got 8 left. That was easy, right? So that's an easy reminder. 4 data points. The second group of 4 are the documents that you use. You've got to understand what documents are in play for your basic investing deals. They are a purchase contract, also called a purchase agreement, also called a buy and sale agreement, also called an offer. You got to understand what that is because that's what you're going to be using. The second thing you need to know is what's a deed. A deed is a transfer document. That's how you transfer property from one to another. That's why we say we deed the property over. All right. The third, I keep saying the second. The third thing you need to know is a note. Anytime you are financing real estate, you are going to sign a note. That is your promise to pay. Okay. Promissory note. So you got to understand what and how to use a promissory note. And the last document, you don't even touch. The closing company drafts it for you. And anybody that's ever purchased a piece of real estate has had to sign this at some point, just like they've had to sign a note or purchase real estate with financing. It is a security instrument. Now, a security instrument is a document that, when registered with the county, it gives the lender the power to foreclose on the property if you default on the note. So we think of it like this. Your note is your promise to pay. The security instrument is what happens when you don't, right? You see all these properties in foreclosure, and that's because they defaulted on the note, okay? Those 4 documents. So the first 4 things you need to know as a new real estate investor is the 4 data points. You got to be able to answer the following 4 questions. What does it cost, or what am I willing to pay? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? I get my fingers messed up. I'm slow when it comes to, I can't talk and put fingers up at the same time. I'd have been a horrible game banger. But anyway, what does it cost? What does it cost to fix up? What's it going to be worth when I'm done? How much income can it generate? You got to be able to answer those 4 questions. If you can't, stop. If you need help, I have a guide. I give it away for free. Just text me, reach out to me. I'll go ahead and get it to you. Okay. Whether you're in our real estate family as one of my students or not, I will give you that guide for free. I don't want people out there, getting some false confidence and getting into something they can't get out of. The second group of 4 out of 12 are the documents that I just mentioned: purchase agreement, deed, note, security instrument. You got to know what those 4 things are. Google them. It's simple. Go into ChatGPT. It'll tell you all about them. The last 4 are the tools that we actually use when we are conducting business. Now, there's a lot more for somebody like myself who has a real estate investing business and that has to mentor 350 people at one time. I've got tools that the average person doesn't need. But your basic tools are going to be eForms or Rocket Lawyer. You got to be able to get the documents somewhere. Even if you own real estate, you got to do applications and lease agreements and stuff like that. So for your basic ones, eForms or Rocket Lawyer. The second is a landing page or a website. It's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who knows what you do. You got to have a way to generate conversations. Okay. You got to have a place to send people to. That's a landing page or a website. The third thing you're going to need is PropStream. You got to be able to investigate properties. You got to be able to look at public records. You've got to be able to look at comparable sales. You've got to be able to look at property details. You got to be able to look to see who owns the property. You got to be able to look to see what the address is so you can market to people. You got to be able to create lists and marketing campaigns. I use PropStream, but there's other ones like REI Pro and Batch Leads some people use, and so whatever it is, PropStream are one of their competitors. None of them are perfect. PropStream seems to have the best data set out of all of them. Okay. And then the last thing is rentometer.com. Data point number 4 is how much income can it generate? Rentometer.com gives me an analysis on the rental income that I can expect in a particular area. You're really going to need that for multifamily commercial because they're valued based on the income that they generate. All right. So those are the basics. And we're going to wrap it up soon, folks. I'll be on again tomorrow, but we're going to wrap it up soon. So if there's any questions about anything, just reach out to me. I'll make sure to get them to you. James, you got anything you want to add after this, sir? Because I think I'm going to shut it down. I got to get back to work and do some real estate stuff. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about just general business, right?
No, I'm about to go get a manicure and a pedicure.
Or, I swear, usually he only gets a Brazilian wax, so I got to give it to James. A manicure and pedicure.
I don't even know what a Brazilian wax is.
Yeah, don't even worry. Don't even worry about it.
Is it? Do you get those while you watch your rom-coms?
All right, everybody, we are going to tap out. Thanks to the folks that did share the room. We're going to be on here quite a bit now. This is a new TikTok page and a new TikTok account, so we're just trying to spread the love on the real estate side. That being said, you guys know how to reach out to me. You're on the profile right now, and we are shutting it down. All right, you're about to hear this corny